The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. Happy New Year! Have you ever wondered what happens at a Christmas tree farm when Christmas is over for another year? And what's the best way for folks to get rid of their Christmas trees? We're going to dive into those questions on today's show, and we're going to start at Go-Go's Tree Farm.
Hello, everybody out there in Radio Land. My name is Mike Gogo, G-O-G-O. I am the owner of a 400-acre Christmas tree and timber farm just about 10 miles out of Nanaimo, and we have operated this as Gogo's Christmas Tree Farm since 1929. So this was our 93rd year of selling Christmas trees and growing Christmas trees. It all started in 1929 when my late father, decided during the Depression year that they would cut some trees on Vancouver Island and ship them by rail to San Francisco. Since then, it's morphed into a U-cut where people can come out and get a nice sharp saw at the gate, some nice chocolate, and they can avail themselves of any one of 10,000 trees for the very reasonable price of $40.
So what happens at a Christmas tree farm when the calendar turns over to January?
Well, what we do immediately is go around and cut all the stumps off right level with the ground, so it's not going to be dangerous for anyone in the next year. If a child falls over something, don't want to half impale themselves on it, so we cut them flat off of the ground, and then we actually fertilize all the trees that are left. We fertilize them with a special mix of fertilizer of 12-12-12 plus missing nutrients, which they add in at the fertilizer factory. And then that's it until March, and then we plant trees. We'll be planting 20,000 trees of 6 different varieties this spring. And after that, we spray the broom to get rid of that. And after that, we water the trees. And then the fall, September, we prune the trees.
So how long does it take from the time you plant a tree to the time it's
7 to 9 years.
7 to 9 years.
All depends on the species. Fir only take about 7 years. Stuff like spruce and nobles, they take about 9 or 10 years.
And we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that recently you've had to start doing something you have never done before, and that's water the trees in the summer.
Yes, before we just had to plant them and, try to keep the deer population down. But now, with the change in climate, it's an entirely different ballgame. I decided 3 years ago we had to get out of business after 93 years or do it right. And now, if you go plant a tree, you got to think about it like it's a tomato. They got to have water and lots of it. Like when I was a young fellow in my 20s and 30s, I had a lot of cattle, and we used to have a hard time getting 4 hot days in a row in the summer months to make hay. Well, now we've seen a couple of summers where we didn't get any water, any water, not even anything on the windshield in the morning in the way of recovery for a 6-week period. So if you don't have the irrigation equipment to water them, you're just not going to be in the game anymore.
So now the calendar has turned to January. A lot of people are starting to have to think about getting rid of their Christmas trees. What do you think is the best way to do that?
Well, it all depends on what area you live. Here, the people that in this area here, they bring the trees back and they throw them on a pile on the farm here, and then we just add them to bark and edgings from our sawmill next door, and we chip them and send into a pulp mill, and they're made into electricity. They are used in what's called hog fuel, and that generates electricity. So they're used for something good other than just throwing in a pile and deteriorating. They are used to create power.
And is that what's happening to your Christmas tree this year?
Yes, it is. We've been doing that for many years now. It's kind of a utopian situation in as much as a young Christmas tree, produces a tremendous amount of oxygen by taking carbon dioxide in the air. The trees are like people. The young people have very, very good lungs. And young trees produce way more oxygen than big trees. You can have a 3 or 4 foot Douglas fir, and it's quite decadent. They produce next to nothing. And they're only alive on that velm, that little piece of bark inside the tree. And so these young trees really purify the air. They do a great job of that. They also afford a great place for wildlife to live. We have several big ponds here we use for irrigation, and there's even some Canadian geese get in here, and even the odd trumpeter swan. Lots of ducks, things like that. So it's a great place for them, and a great place for the deer to grow up, and they've got lots of protection, you know. We also have some second growth forests here as part of our forestry operation, so they're kept safe, and they've got a place now because there's so much trees being taken in this area that sometimes I feel they don't have anywhere to go. But they've got a big place here. We've got 400 acres, and they can afford a nice lifestyle.
How was this past year for you as a tree farm?
Remarkably stable. It's just amazing how things change, not all that much. And sometimes we're up 5-10%, sometimes we're about even, but we never been down from what we normally sell. And the reason is it doesn't expand is because most people that moved in this and that area come into apartment buildings. Of course, you're not allowed to have a fresh tree in the apartment, which I always find a little strange because you're allowed to smoke. I don't know any trees that smoke. But that is the way of the world. But we're fully, not that we can't use a little more clientele, but we're very, very well subscribed.
We already talked about maybe the changing weather in the summer with drier summers and the need to water. Other than that, in your 62 years in the game, have you seen any other big changes?
Yes, very big changes. Like I used to go down to Oregon for many, many years, and I'd buy Christmas trees down in Oregon because a lot of people were getting older there, and the trees were like anything else. It's chicken today and feathers tomorrow. And when the market was good, a lot of people would plant trees, and it all come ready at the same time. Climax forest, they call it. And then they didn't have enough people to prune them, or didn't have enough customers to buy them. So I used to buy them down. They're quite reasonable. They are beautiful trees. I'd bale them and bring them up here and sell them to different grocery stores. But now, as time goes by, young people don't want to put in the dedication and the work to those trees. A lot of folks have got older, and right now there's a very, very tough to get trees. Very tough. I know all the main players in the business, and sometimes I'd phone them and I'd say, okay, I could use a semi-load or two, which means 1,000 or two of a certain variety. And now they say, well, we'll do our best, but we can't promise. So you can't run a business on promises. So, yeah, they're getting scarcer all the time because look at the price of land. Like in BC, I would say 85 to 90% of the Christmas trees in BC come from Washington and Oregon. And the reason is because you can buy cheap land in the interior of British Columbia, but it takes forever to grow a tree up there. It takes 25 or 30 years. But if you buy it on the mainland in the Fraser Valley or Vancouver Island, land, of course, here is very expensive. So who wants to buy a 100-acre property, plant trees, and wait for 8 years for your first payday? The answer to that is nobody.
So how does that impact you, a business that's been going since the 1920s?
Well, it just shores it up. It makes it good, you know. Like we wholesale to a lot of people, ma and pa places where they've got a flower shop or something, 100 here, 200 there, 300 there on the Gulf Islands and different things like that. And I noticed this year we got paid very promptly, which I appreciated, but I'm sure the people are aware that there's nowhere else to turn. Well, now that we've ever taken advantage of that, we make sure that the trees are of a very high quality. But one of my main concerns in the winter is that I'm able to provide to my wholesale customers a fresh tree, but we have to be very careful because if we get a big dump of snow, it becomes impossible to harvest them. Now, we've gotten away with that very, very many years in a row. We've seen years where the last load that went out of there that night, a big dump of snow. So it's just like the poor prairie farmer. He grows his grain all year, and then if he gets a real bad snowstorm in the early fall, he's had it. So we've been very lucky.
Do you have any leftover trees that were maybe cut down and now you need to find something to do with them?
No, next to none. Next to none. Because we have trees growing here, our retail lot in Nanaimo, which my daughter runs there, if she's down to not too very many, we can always cut 50 or 75 and throw them on a 1-ton and drop them off there so that people can always avail themselves of a nice fresh tree.
Is there anything else you want people to know about Christmas trees as we're here in January?
We have an experience here. You bring the whole family out here and have a good time. You get saw given to you at the gate. You get greeted at the gate. You get nice, high-quality Swiss chocolate at the gate. You get thanked. There's wreaths available here, very reasonable. Fresh berried holly here, very reasonable. And it's a family thing where people take pictures. We've now got third-generation families coming out. So it's the experience. Like, where can you take the whole family out, get a nice Christmas tree, have a good time for $40? Not many places.
Well, Mr. Gogo, thank you so much for taking some time to tell me about it.
Well, unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I was so glad to take time today to talk to you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Mike Gogo of Gogo's Christmas Tree Farm. Today on Midcoast Morning, we're investigating the fate of Christmas trees now that January is upon us. Mississippi State University's Curtis Vanderschaff authored an article in The Conversation about sustainability when choosing a Christmas tree. Part of that story is what happens once Christmas is over. I got in touch with him to learn more.
My name is Dr. Curtis Vanderschaff, and I'm an assistant professor, forestry regional extension specialist at Mississippi State University.
It's time to get rid of the Christmas tree. What is the best way to do that?
Well, it would probably depend on whether you're talking about a real Christmas tree or a artificial, you could say fake. Fake is a little negative, I would think, more artificial tree. So a real tree, it's going to probably depend on where you got the tree, initially the source. So for instance, some people may just decorate a tree outside in their yard, and so therefore their tree is going to stay growing. So there's really not much I think you have to dispose of. Now, if you're getting a tree, obviously, from a Christmas tree farm or from a tree lot or from a retailer store, then you're going to have to kind of think about how to get rid of that tree. And so there's a variety of ways. You could just throw it into the trash normally, right? And that's probably going to create some problems if it goes to a landfill, and it could be issues with methane gas. You could definitely put it outside to decay on its own in the backyard, and what that may do for certain wildlife. You can chip it up as well if you have a chipper, and if you don't, there's probably some programs with the city, maybe even neighborhood, but I know sometimes retailers even have programs here, in the Southeast U.S., maybe even things like Boy Scouts or something may come and get it, and they may chip it. I know you can compost it. You can even kind of maybe cut it up a little bit, either with a handsaw or chainsaw, and that may help a little bit with the decay. And all of that's going to provide habitat, say, for insects and birds.
So what happens from an environmental perspective when a single tree is cut down?
Well, environmentally, an individual tree, depending on what species it is and where it's getting cut from, I don't think an individual tree is going to create any major problem. Most trees are going to regenerate naturally. In Christmas tree farms, they're going to replant those trees. That's the whole business of a Christmas tree farm, is it's going to, they're going to, they're going to grow the tree, cut it, sell it, make the revenue, and then they're going to come back through and I would think replant or they're going to plant a new tree there, and you're going to do the whole process. So I don't think it's going to have a major issue. And some people say you're cutting trees, even in the US, you can cut trees from national forest, and the number of people cutting trees in national forest, it's not like it's, 100 million people or anything, So I don't think you're going to have much impact if you're cutting 100,000 trees across the nation. Also, think about the size of the trees that you're cutting. You probably don't want a 100-foot tall Christmas tree in your house. You can't even get it in there. So my point is, you're gonna cut saplings or you could say seedlings. So these are trees that there's probably many of those trees out there, and some selective cutting of them may actually be beneficial to the remaining trees, that help them have more space for nutrients, light, and moisture to grow. So to me, you're not going to have a major impact on the Christmas tree harvesting of real trees. I don't think it's going to have a major impact on the global warming or anything like that, or climate change. I don't believe.
So it won't have a major impact on global warming or emissions, but on just a scientific level of how this stuff works, like what does happen when a tree is chopped down?
Well, it's probably depending on the species. It's going to stop growing, so it's probably going to stop sequestering carbon, and so it's going to probably eventually going to go into a carbon emission. Right, it's actually going to decay, so it's going to result in that carbon being released back into the atmosphere. How exactly the whole decay process works, Joe, I'm not sure I kind of talk about that right off the top of my head. But, whenever you're cutting a tree down, you're probably it's not going to sequester carbon beyond what it's already sequestered. But think about, too, though, when you're talking about you're cutting a trees down, the root systems are still there. So they're still going to sequester carbon for some amount, and in fact, for many tree species, they'll regenerate back off that off that root stock. So you may remove the top, but that root stock is still there and still actively growing, you could say, or will grow in the spring. Say if you harvest during the winter, and then it'll grow a new, at least one top, if not several new trees or tops off that root stock that's existing.
So Christmas tree farms, maybe even the same tree sort of starts to grow back without having to plant anything new?
Probably not the majority of species. I have heard, I believe, like balsam fir, some people can cut the top and it'll come back. The tree will come back off that same rootstock. A lot of species like hardwood species, oaks, and they'll come back. A lot of times conifers won't necessarily come back off that root stock. But as I said, though, right, that root stock will stay into the ground for some time, sequester the carbon, and then they'll replant and kind of go through the whole cycle again. So
earlier on, you mentioned that it was possible if your tree ends up in a landfill that it might start to emit methane gas. Can you explain a little bit more about that for me?
Well, once again, Joe, I don't know the whole chemistry of it, but I believe the way that from what I've read, is the way that they seal the landfills, the way that they seal off the waste. It must be the type of bacteria, I believe, or fungus. I would think the bacteria that is decaying it must result in methane gas release, so it must convert it into methane, and I've heard that's about 25 or 30 times worse than CO2 emissions. So it probably has to do to the, as I said, kind of the conditions for the particular organisms that's decaying the tree that then results in that, I guess you could say the wood fiber, the way it breaks down, it must be emitted off as methane gas, as opposed to, I guess, the CO2 emission, maybe say more the breakdown of that wood if it was more within open air.
So if there's one takeaway from today, it's if you've got a Christmas tree to dispose of, a live one, the only thing you want to make sure of is that it doesn't somehow end up in a landfill.
I would think that would be the biggest means of reducing, I guess you could say, your carbon footprint is that finding some other alternative than to putting it into a landfill would be great. Yeah.
Is there anything else you think folks need to know on this subject?
I guess I would just like to say, in terms of the whole, I've seen this, Joe, I see this where we're talking about the carbon footprints of the artificial tree versus the real tree. And I think sometimes it's important, right? You're talking about millions of people around the world, at least a million, maybe even a billion or more, I guess, that use Christmas trees. But I think sometimes people, maybe we get too concentrated on the artificial versus real, and we forget, the amount of lights that you're using, how long you leave the lights on, what are the ornaments, how many ornaments are you putting on, and all the carbon footprints associated with all of those things, and then all the other things that are going on during the Christmas holidays, to where really the Christmas trees themselves are probably pretty minimal in terms of your carbon footprint. Think about other things that you're doing with the tree beyond just the type of tree itself.
Curtis Vanderschaff is an assistant professor of forestry at Mississippi State University.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Support Midcoast Morning and CHLY's nonprofit newsroom today by becoming a sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. Local news can't survive without your support. Another way to help us out is to share this show with your friends and tell them why they should support us. Finally, if you're listening to the podcast edition of Midcoast Morning, go and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast feed you use. It helps people find us.
What would happen if you were to saw up your old Christmas tree and put the pieces in your green bin? It turns out, here in Nanaimo, it might not be the best idea.
My name is David Thompson. I'm the acting manager of sanitation for City of Nanaimo Public Works.
Hypothetically, you could chop up your Christmas tree, maybe saw it into several pieces and put it in your green bin. What would happen to it if you did that?
Well, the green bin capacity and the capacity for the city to provide that service is pretty limited. It's really designed for your kitchen scraps and for, sort of regular yard and garden waste. Something like a tree is a bit too big for that service, and really, under our guidelines, anything bigger than the size of your pinky in diameter really shouldn't be going in there. It should be going to a dedicated green waste facility where it can be dealt with and properly composted and chipped up. So certainly if your Christmas tree is very small, it might fit in the green bin, but most of them are going to be larger than what we can handle at curbside. Bigger
than the diameter of your pinky. So something like maybe like a corn of cob is even larger than what we're talking about. Well,
cob of corn is a different material. I'm thinking about, specifically wood waste and woody debris. So we can handle small branches and things like that, but the actual trunk of the tree is going to be too big for the processing equipment at the processing plant.
Gotcha. And just to satisfy my curiosity, maybe outside the issue of Christmas trees, what does happen to the stuff in the green bin?
The material collected in the green bin goes to a composting facility at Duke Point. It's a privately run facility and provides service to not only the city of Nanaimo, but the regional district, as well as some commercial operations. And the material there is ground up. It's blended with food waste and green waste, and it goes through a composting process. And then that compost is used around the community.
If folks have a Christmas tree and they're looking to dispose of it now that it's January, what is the best way to do that here in Nanaimo, do you think?
I think the best way to deal with your Christmas tree post-holiday season is to find a local chipping event. They're often put on by local service groups, and not only do you get a service of having your Christmas tree dealt with, but provides valuable benefit and donations to those valuable groups.
And if folks are looking to get rid of their Christmas trees, maybe get them chipped up, is there anything they need to keep in mind, or are there any maybe mistakes you find people commonly make?
When thinking about the Christmas trees and making sure they're ready for composting, it's really important that you undress it. You take your lights off, take all the tinsel off, take all your decorations off. And one of the things I will point out is that spray snow or flocking that some people will put on their Christmas trees actually makes the tree non-compostable. It's like putting plastic or paint in the compost. It's not going to do good things. So as soon as you've sprayed your tree with artificial snow, it's unfortunately going to need to go straight into the landfill.
David Thompson is the acting manager of sanitation for the City of Nanaimo Public Works. If you're looking to get your tree chipped in Nanaimo, you've got some options. There will be events at the BC SPCA on Hammond Road, as well as North Town Centre and the Country Club Mall. All of those are this weekend. Here's Jessica Henderson of Nanaimo Search and Rescue sharing the details behind one of the events.
So this weekend, Nanaimo Search and Rescue volunteers will be at Country Club Centre from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on both Saturday and Sunday. And we'll be there with VI Tree Service to help get your trees chipped. So you pull up, there'll be some cones directing traffic, and you pull up with your Christmas tree, and we can help you take the Christmas tree and get it chipped. Just the only thing you have to do is make sure that all the decorations are off your tree. It's by donation, and this year we are donating to the John Barsby Outdoor Education Program. The John Barsby Outdoor Education Program is for teenagers that are in an area of school that's focused on outdoor education. The funds would be going for them to have the ability to have equipment, to go on outdoor hikes, learn about sustainability, and build on outdoor survival skills.
Jessica Henderson of Nanaimo Search and Rescue sharing the details of a tree chipping event the group is organizing this Saturday and Sunday outside Country Club Mall. You can find a list of tree chipping events across the island and the province on the Recycling Council of British Columbia's website. The URL you need is rcbc.ca/tree-chipping-events. That's our story for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and Arby Frew is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHLY's newsletter at chly.ca/subscribe for updates from our nonprofit newsroom and more. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you would like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. Support nonprofit journalism in Nanaimo and on the Salish Sea today by becoming a monthly sustaining donor at $5 or more per month. Support the program at chly.ca/donate. If you're already a supporter, record a voice memo telling others where you're listening from and why they too should support our work. After you're done, you can email it to us. Also, share the podcast with your friends. While Meta is blocking Canadian users from sharing news content on their Facebook feeds, you can still share our podcast directly with your friends via Facebook or Instagram Messenger. Finally, this program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Snuneymuxw First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.